You're so into everything in this world that this will be a wonderful experience for you. Yeah, that's wonderful. But Benji's asking me questions that you will not believe. He's taking it. Now I want to tell you something. He wants to know how Grandma Sarah and Grandpa Julius met. Now Grandma Sarah was 17 when she got married, and Grandpa was 27. There was 10 years difference. I haven't got a clue how they met. Yes. I don't think so, because I asked her. She doesn't know. But you know, there's so many things that are lost in history, because you never think of asking your parents questions. You never think, you just don't think of it until it's too late. You know. But that would have been interesting. Okay. Okay, honey. Good talking to you. Oh, that's wonderful. Hey, okay, have a wonderful time. I'll be interested about your adventure. And say hi to Sale. And here's Benji. I love you too.
Hello. Terrific. How about you? Yeah, we're trying. We're Sarah had told me like a week ago when she was in Chicago. I guess I just would have paid attention for more than 2 seconds. I would have figured it out. Just, yeah. That's actually, it's funny because that's kind of what I'm hearing from Nana a little bit. No, not at all. I'm getting that feeling on several levels. Yeah, we are. We have the place reserved for Saturday night. The Ward Pavilion inside of Wildwood Metro Park. It holds about 180 people, which is, if we get 100% turnout, that's exactly how many people will be there. And it's kind of right in the middle of the woods. We'll bring in the caterer, should do a nice job. I'm going to start talking to caterers this week. On Friday evening before, we're hoping that the Mud Hens will be in town, and we're going to reserve a room in Mud Hens Stadium. And if that happens, then we'll reserve a block of rooms in a downtown hotel, so you can just get into the hotel, get settled, relax, walk over to the ball game, have hors d'oeuvres, cocktails, maybe hamburgers, hot dogs, whatever, for the game, just to kind of like a warm-up round. And then Saturday, we might go over to the country club. Some guys can golf, some guys can tent, girls, guys, whatever. There'll be a pool. We'll reserve the pool area for kids. People want to play cards, whatever. Just kind of hang out together Saturday. And Saturday night's the big deal. And then Sunday we'll have a brunch, and then everyone goes home. Yeah, that's roughly the idea right now. That'd be fun. Awesome. As much pressure as you can apply, it's much appreciated. Yeah. Oh, great. Now, do you have old pictures and stuff like that? Do you have memorabilia of any sort that you can, Awesome. Yeah, Sarah's in... Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you. And you're coming in town, November? Oh, okay. Well, I'll see you then. Wonderful. All right. Bye.
She's going to Singapore,
Amazing.
Vietnam,
Can you imagine that trip?
and Cambodia.
It's unbelievable. I've had a couple of acquaintances take that trip. They say it's just,
Yeah, she was coming here in October, but she got this opportunity to go with Zale's son and his wife. He was going on business, and they asked her to come along, and she couldn't resist.
Nah, that's as good as it gets.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, getting back to middle name.
Yes. Middle names. Hold on. Let me just make sure this is going right. Okay, middle names.
Okay. We all didn't have middle names.
Nobody had a middle name.
Yes, they did. Donald never had a middle name. Raymond was Raymond Mayer. That's why it's not Raymond M. Steinberg.
Okay.
He always uses them. Evelyn didn't have a middle name. Belle didn't have a middle name. Uncle Mutt had a middle name. His name was, the reason I'm telling you this is because it's hysterical. His name was Morton Bruvan Steinberg.
Bruvan?
Uh-huh. That was his middle
Like
name.
with a B?
No, with an R.
Bruvan.
Okay. And later in life, he changed it from Reuben to Dominic, Morton Dominic Steinberg. I don't know why he did it, because he had a beautiful name, but that's the way he was.
Yeah.
Is that funny?
Yeah, it's really funny.
And then Miriam, Aunt Mickey's name is Miriam.
Uh-huh.
Mickey was her maid name. Her maid name. Mickey was her nickname.
Right.
And how she got her nickname when she was growing up, she was very, very little. And Grandpa Julius used to mark out, see how we were growing on the wall, and she got the nickname of Midget at the time. They called her Midget. And from there it got to be Mickey. How it got to be Mickey, I don't know.
Yeah.
Then there was, after Aunt Mickey, was Uncle Abe, that was Abraham Henry, and then Uncle Ted didn't have a middle name.
So it was just...
Certain ones had a middle name, I don't know why, maybe because who they were named after.
Yeah.
And I always thought I was adopted because as a little girl I remember that story of being adopted. And I was the only one in the family that wasn't named after a relative that passed away. I was named after a friend of Grandma Sarah's sister who never had any children. And when she passed away, her name was Belle, and I was named after her because she didn't have anyone to name her. And her friend didn't have anyone to name her after.
Wow.
And I was the only one in the family that was named after someone that wasn't a relative.
Yeah.
So I used to always kid my Grandma Sarah that I must have been adopted.
That's so funny.
Isn't that a funny story?
Yeah, the combination of the two I can see.
So anyhow, getting back to the pictures.
Well, let's go. Let's do the pictures towards the end.
Okay.
Is that all right? Do you want me to hold them?
No, it's
Okay.
fine.
So the family, we basically covered where the family started, how everyone came together. Julius and Sarah start having children, and at a rapid pace. I didn't do the math, but it seems like it's
every 18 months.
every 18 months.
Except with Aunt Evie and I, there was like 2.5 to 3 years difference.
Okay, is that because of losing Gladys?
No, it had nothing to do with losing glasses. There was a stillborn baby between the two of us.
Mm. A
Otherwise,
boy.
everything, I don't know if it was a boy. Aunt Mickey says it was a boy, I don't know. But I do know that my certificate was at the Board of Education said I was younger than I was, and they kept me in the kindergarten for going on the 3rd year. And I cried and I came home and I says, I knew I shouldn't be in the kindergarten, I have to be in the 1st grade. And that's when they looked up they decided that they thought I was the stillborn baby instead of so in school, I would have been a year ahead if it hadn't been for that mistake.
Oh, I see. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Do you was ever talked about the stillborn baby?
No.
Uh-huh.
Not that I remember.
So, you're all basically filling up, what I'm picturing is that everyone's filling up this house on Bancroft Street.
Yeah, we were already on Franklin Avenue.
So now you moved to Franklin. At what point did you move from Bancroft to Franklin Avenue?
When I was like 5 years old.
Oh, okay. Early on.
Yeah. So I don't remember Bancroft that much as just different stories that were told.
So then you moved to Franklin Street.
Right.
And where's Franklin Street exactly?
Franklin and Delaware. The home isn't there anymore. It was gutted and so forth.
Okay.
And then there's a little house there now, but
Okay.
not our house.
And what do you remember from that house?
In that house, we lived in the corner of Franklin and Delaware. And what I remember about that house, when Aunt Ann and Uncle Abe were ready to go to school, they wanted to go to Scott because it was closer instead of Woodward. So we were right on the corner, so Grandma Sarah went down and had the address changed from 2479 Franklin to 5 West Delaware, and they got to go to Scott High School.
Okay.
And then we all went to Scott High School after that.
Now, was it a big house?
It was a very big house.
Mm-hmm. Was it, did everyone have their own bedroom?
No. There was 2 gigantic bedrooms. They could have been dorms.
Uh-huh.
And all 5 boys slept in that bedroom. There was like 3 double beds. And in the girls' room, the same thing.
So the boys shared a bed?
Yeah. And the same thing in the girls' room. I mean, they were tremendous rooms.
Sure.
And then there was another big room that Grandpa slept in. And Grandma had another room on the other side.
Who did you share a bed with?
I think Aunt Effie.
Yeah.
I think so.
Did you sleep every, head to toe?
What do you mean?
I heard a story at some point that the boys or the girls would sleep head to toe.
No.
Nothing like that.
No.
Okay. So,
I can't imagine that.
that's why I'm asking. So is it a brick house?
No. It was a wood house.
Uh-huh. And did it have like a family room when you walked in?
It had a big porch.
Uh-huh.
A big porch, big enough for a swing on one side, one of these old-fashioned swings that could seat like 4 people. And they had a glider, kind of a swing, but it was called a glider on the other side, and chairs. It was a big porch, clear across the front.
Okay.
And then it had a vestibule entrance that you walked into, and there was like a cedar chest, built-in cedar chest as you walk on the side. Oh, it had double doors. You came in one door, and there was and then another door, and then the vestibule.
Neat.
And then it had a staircase going up and a staircase going down. One that went up from the front of the house, and one that went down to the kitchen.
Huh.
It was a big house.
Yeah, that's interesting. It sounds.
And then it had a big living room, a big dining room, a big kitchen, and off the kitchen it was called a butler's pantry because it extended all the way across. It was just a huge pantry. I mean, there was an ironing board in there and cupboards all the way down the side, and there was a window in the back of the cupboard. It was a big cupboard.
And it had plenty of food in there, and.
Well, yeah,
Well, I picture a pantry being.
Well, the pantry was for dishes too.
Oh, okay.
Dishes, everything you can imaginable was there.
Now, at this point, would you still consider the family poor?
I think we were always poor.
Yeah.
We weren't poor that we didn't have everything that we needed, but at this point we worked and we had nice clothes and we...
What year do you think we're talking about?
Huh?
Right, when you moved into Franklin Street, or now Delaware Street?
Franklin in Delaware. Well, it was 85 years ago. It's a long time.
Yeah. So I'm trying to figure out the math on that. We're in 2005, right?
You're right.
And this was 85 years ago, so we're looking at 1920s, right?
It was during the Depression time.
Well, you moved in before the Depression. It sounds like you moved in before the Depression. Does that sound right?
No, I think the Depression was when we were there. The Depression was like 1929.
Right.
The big Great Depression when people were committing suicide.
Sure.
I mean, losing everything they had. It was an awful
Right.
time. They didn't have insurance at the banks, and everyone lost their savings.
Mm-hmm.
It was terrible.
Sure, but you had already moved into Franklin and
Yeah, we
Delaware.
moved in 1920, and in 1929 was the really big depression.
But that didn't affect, Julius still had his job,
He always had a job.
and Sarah was still selling real estate?
Up until what time did she stop selling? I can't remember, but we were already on Franklin and Delaware.
Interesting. So she was still cooking for the family?
Oh,
and,
yes.
And so the youngest, Don, Ray, and the youngest were still in grade school,
Right,
and the oldest were going into high school.
right.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So, the house itself, were there nice things in the house, or how would you describe the
We
living
always
conditions?
had nice things in the house.
Yeah?
Grandma Sarah always managed to have nice things.
Mm-hmm. What is your earliest memory of everyone just living together and commingling? I mean, because how many kids at this point was Aunt Frida still alive? Yeah, she must have been, because you were
Yeah,
living until
because
she
I
lived there
was-
for 6 years.
Yeah, I was first starting high school, so she was still, I think she died during that time.
Yeah. So you've got, actually, what's the math on that? You've got 13 kids? 15 people in the house?
What do you mean? No,
So
there
we're
was-
starting with,
Well, Frida passed away.
but right when you moved into this house, Aunt Frida was still alive,
Yeah.
and Ann,
Oh, so that was 10 of us.
and so there's 10 of you. I'm sorry, where did I come up with
And the
13?
mother and father would be 12.
11, 12, I'm sorry. Yeah, so the 12 of you living in a house.
And then, and when Grandpa, I'm trying to work at how Grandpa moved in too. I don't know how he worked it, but I think he had one of the front bedrooms. And I think Grandpa, I don't know how it worked, but
Mhm.
maybe by that time, I don't really remember, but it worked out.
Mhm.
That's all I know.
So what are your memories of all living together? I mean, what was the schedule like? I mean, I imagine you must have...
Everyone was in different directions.
Yeah.
This one was working, this one was here, this one was there.
Were you as close with your older brothers and sisters
I
as
was,
your younger?
yes,
And they were involved in your life? Did they?
yes.
Yeah. They walk you to school or help you with education and give you
I don't
advice?
remember anyone walking me to school.
Mhm.
I don't remember anyone helping with my education except when I worked, I started getting nice clothes and stuff.
Mhm. Do you remember any stories from, how did everyone have breakfast together? It doesn't sound like you sat down.
No,
At that point, there's no time
No,
to sit down and
no.
you grab something bite
Even
to
at
eat.
dinner time, that really we ate at different times.
Mhm. When would Sarah and Julius eat?
They ate at separate times too.
Mhm. It sounds like they were in many ways, the whole family was going on. It was like,
We were
like-
going on and we were cooperating, but we weren't, there was just, everyone had different friends.
Mhm.
Everyone seemed to go their own way, and were independent of each other in that respect.
Mhm. Do you remember, any big family dramas, on the lighter side, in terms of, girls not getting along? I mean, how many bathrooms were in this house?
One bathroom.
In Franklin, Delaware, one bathroom.
And then there was one down the basement with the shower that Grandpa Julius used.
But only him.
Yeah.
So there's five girls sharing a bathroom,
And the boys too.
and the boys too.
But everyone was very private.
Yeah? I mean, it
Very
just seems like it'd be
private.
so difficult.
Well, we must have been healthy.
Yeah,
That's all I can tell you.
yeah.
Because I can't remember any incident that we had a problem.
No real fights, no.
No.
Yeah.
Sometimes, like, I might stay in the bathroom too long, I was setting my hair or something, they knock on the door, I'd have to hurry up, but
Yeah.
that was it.
What about, was there Halloween at the house, or, 4th of July, Thanksgiving?
there was always Thanksgiving and there was always Passover that we were together.
Uh-huh.
But other than that, I don't remember.
Mhm. Who ran the show at, if you were all together on these special events? Was Sarah in charge? And
Definitely in charge.
right.
No question.
Yeah. So, what about vacations and
There
trips?
was no such a thing as a vacation.
How about just like we're all gonna go to the a local lake and have a picnic?
Never. We never had a vacation.
Really?
Never. Except the 2 summers that I went to camp. I can't remember ever going on vacation. Ever.
And Sarah never went, and none of the kids.
Well, at 2 summers when her asthma was very bad, once Aunt Ann went with her to Petoskey, Michigan. That's right near Charlevoix.
Sure.
Because it did help her, the fresh air, or whatever the air was like.
Uh-huh.
And one time Aunt Mickey went with her 2 summers that she had a very bad case of asthma.
Uh-huh.
They went with her. That's all I can
And
remember.
that was it for trips, day trips even, or picnics, or
No,
and nothing like that.
Nothing.
That's really interesting.
If
Isn't
I
it?
tell you nothing,
And where would you celebrate special occasions? Just at the dinner table in the house?
just at home,
Passover and whatnot was all.
just at home.
How was the Steinberg family different from other families?
Well, because we had a big family. I think other families might have had 5 kids or so. But I think the Steinberg family and the Musta family were the 2 families in Toledo that had big families, that were friendly,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Sure. They were friendly with the 2 families were
Yeah.
friendly with each other.
Right.
What was
And
another?
they were friendly because the kids were friendly,
Mm.
you know, with each other. Like, as David Musta, that just died, was friendly with Uncle Mutt.
Mm-hmm.
And then they had a brother, Marvin Musta, that was friendly with Uncle Abe. And they lived on Fulton Street, not too far from us, where they went to the same school.
Uh-huh.
And they were the 2 big families in Toledo.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
And so everyone knew each other, and
Right. But Mr. Musta made a very good living,
mm-hmm.
and so they were much richer than we were.
Yeah. How much of a role did money play? I mean, did it bother you? Did you feel insignificant in any way, or was there, like nowadays, there's very defined classes. Would you feel it was the same way back then, as much? Or did it feel like everyone around you was all about
I
the
don't
same?
think they have so many defined classes today as they had years ago.
Mm,
That's my honest opinion.
yeah. Now, were your neighbors, did they feel like they had more or less than you?
No, it seemed to be in the same categories. Like I say, I didn't know I was poor because everyone else was poor around
Yeah.
me. The way I think of poor today.
Yeah. So in what respects would you say you were, besides being a big family, how would you feel like you were the same as other families at the time? It's kind of a tough question.
It is a tough question,
Yeah.
because we did everything everyone else did. I don't know, they might have went on vacations and this and that, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as going to school and that sort of thing,
Mm-hmm.
you're the same.
No, when you were living together, you had mentioned that you changed your, the collars or the cuffs of your dresses.
Well, because I didn't have that many clothes and I like to dress nice for school.
Mm-hmm.
So every night I would wash either my blouse or I would wash my collars and cuffs and iron, and I could iron. Even as a very young girl, I knew how to iron.
Where would you wash these clothes?
Right in the basin.
In the bathroom? In the bathroom that everyone shared? So
Yeah.
just in there's like in the bathtub in there?
Yeah.
And you would just scrub the shirt and clean the
Right,
shirt?
right.
And I assume everyone was?
I imagine. I don't know about anyone else in the family. I know what I did.
Now what about I would imagine you were sharing clothes, no?
Yes, I did share clothes.
Uh-huh.
When Aunt Mickey went to work, a lot of times I could wear some of her clothes,
Uh-huh.
And so on, so on. That's the way it was.
That's neat. Okay. And then what about the boys? Did they share clothes? And
I imagine so. I don't know too much about it, but I'm sure.
Right.
I see Uncle Dan with the suit on.
Actually, that's one of my questions. Do you have any idea why he was wearing a suit? Do you think that was his bar mitzvah?
I don't think so because they are dressed.
How did you guys do your hair? You each did your hair separately?
Yeah,
Oh, that's fine.
this is all yours.
Actually, you know what? Let me ask you about the Mickey Lane shop, okay?
Oh, sure.
So, what year did that get started? A ballpark.
Huh?
A ballpark. Just a rough idea.
I would have had everything down for you if I'd have known that.
Oh, no, that's all right. Just a rough idea. How old were you roughly at the time?
Trying to think. Isn't that crazy? I can't remember. We're in business like 25, 26 years. And we're out of business since 1983.
1983?
Yeah.
Okay. So that is, you said about 26 years?
Uh-huh.
So it was about 1957.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Well, that's amazing. I had no idea.
Yeah,
So you went into business in 1957.
right.
So how old, so Uncle Bob and and my dad were already, actually my dad was born in what, 1942-ish?
1940, 1944, I think.
1944?
Yeah.
So he wasn't even in college yet when you started the store. Okay.
Yeah, right.
And was the store originally called the
Mary Ann shop.
The Mary Ann shop? Why was it called the Mary Ann shop?
Because they took Aunt Mickey's name, Miriam, and Aunt Ann's name, Ann,
Uh-huh.
and combined it and made it Mary Ann shop. But they weren't Mary Ann shop for more than maybe a year and a half. They were in the building that Dad and I owned on Bancroft Street. We had the grocery store,
Mm-hmm.
and then there was the Mickey Lane shop.
Now, so did you work at the grocery store at the time?
I worked at the grocery store, yes.
And then it was Aunt Ann
And Aunt Mickey.
Okay.
And then there was, after that, there was like a music store or something. It was a pretty big building. And then, when the True Half building, when they were building that, Uncle Don came and said that the True Halves had this building, and there was this vacant store there. Would they be interested in moving in there? Well, it was a very big undertaking, and Aunt Mickey and Aunt Ann couldn't afford it on their own. So they asked me if I would become a partner. It would cost me $10,000. I didn't hesitate 1 minute because I didn't like the grocery store.
Yeah.
I just wasn't. Grandma Sarah says, you're just not suited for the grocery business.
Yeah.
She didn't like me working there at all either.
Yeah.
And so that's what I did, and Papa was agreeable. He thought that was a good idea too, because we could use a double income at that time because we were worried about, like Bob and Jim and Joel going into college and stuff.
Sure.
And it was an expensive proposition.
Yeah.
And the Mickey Lane shop proved to be a very successful undertaking.
Yeah. And so then who was in charge? All three of you were in charge?
All
then?
three. It was very interesting. I was in charge of accounts receivable.
Uh-huh.
Aunt Mickey was in charge of accounts payable. Aunt Ann was in charge of the federal government after we took all our figures, and then we went to the accountant. And so we each had our, besides selling in the store, but Aunt Ann wasn't in the store ever that much, because she worked in the office for Uncle Abe and Uncle Don and Uncle Ray.
Uh-huh.
So she only occasionally worked on Saturday, and then we were open at nights, and then after she worked for the boys, she would come in after dinner and work until we closed the store.
I see. Then you guys would have to take trips to New York for
Yes,
buying trips and
yes.
whatnot. Now that must have been fun.
Yeah, that was fun. The three of us used to go, and it was really great fun.
Yeah. Do you think the other sisters felt left out?
Aunt Abby?
Yeah.
I don't know, because her kids were very small at the time, and she worked in the store. and she seemed to like, Aunt Abby worked for us in the store.
Oh, right.
And she seemed to like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved buying.
So all four of you were in the store, working in
And
the
we
store
always
together.
worked together, and we always got along, and it was wonderful.
Yeah. What do you think that is?
I don't know. Oh,
Okay, sorry.
okay, first of all, this would be your great-great-grandfather. That's Wolf Steinberg, or William.
All right, yeah, let me start there again. So this is Julius's father,
Correct.
and his name?
Was Wolf, W-O-L-F-E, Wolf, or William. In fact, Gully Lane's named after
Billy Lane's named after
Wolf Steinberg.
Wolf Steinberg.
And he was born in 1852. And he passed away in 1923. So I was thinking of this being very old when well, how old would he have been? 1852 and died in 1923.
So 48, 58, 68, 71.
Yeah, so he was fairly a young person. I mean, for I looked at him, he was old.
Yeah.
But when I look at him now, he really wasn't so old. And then your great-great-grandmother, Margolis, or Margaret.
This is Julius's mother.
Right. And she was born in 1851, and she died in 1919.
19.
So he lived with us 4 years.
4 years.
Yeah.
I got you.
I had to look it up because we talked about it yesterday.
Yeah. Now, did we determine where they were from again? Oh, no, that was Sarah. We determined was from Russia.
Right.
I don't recall it.
Yeah. But this is Grandpa Julius's side.
Right. And Grandpa Julius was.
I think probably they were either from Poland or probably some near Germany someplace.
But he was born here.
Grandpa Julius was born here.
Right.
Right. And he was born February 22nd, 1875. And he died in 1971. And Grandma Sarah was born March 5th, 1886, which is 11 years younger than Grandpa. And she died in 1861.
1960.
I mean 1961.
And what about her parents? Do you have any about her parents there?
Gee, I probably have that information at home. I could call you up on some of that.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, remind me when you talk to me on the phone, and I'll look it up. Because I'm sure I have the information someplace.
Yeah.
Funny that I didn't think of that. I could have written that down.
Well, this is a practice run.
Yeah.
That's why we have a practice run to figure out what we're missing.
Okay.
Okay. So actually, we ended last time talking about the Mickey Lane shop, and it was Aunt Mickey and Aunt Ann originally when it was called the Mary Lane shop.
Mary Ann shop.
Mary Ann shop, and then they.
Then 2 years later, we moved to the Truecap building in Westgate,
Mhm.
and I became a part of it.
Right. And Aunt Evie worked in the store also.
Right.
Now you were in charge of buying, did you say?
Now, I did buying, but I also was in charge of accounts receivable. That's when people bought things in the store and charged them, and they'd be paid for them a month later. So I was in charge of keeping their accounts and how much they owed, and sending out statements every month to tell them how much they owed, and then balancing the book at the balancing. Every month I had a balanced accounts receivable, and that was my job. Aunt Mickey had accounts payable, where when the merchandise came in, she marked the merchandise and then put it on the floor to be sold. And she also was a buyer for the store. All three of us were buyers. Aunt Ann was also a buyer. And Aunt Ann only worked in the evenings because we were open at night, and half a day on Saturday, because she worked for Uncle Abe and Uncle Don and Uncle Ray in the office.
Right. I want to get to that also.
Yeah.
How did you decide what to buy?
We all enjoyed fashion. And there was a few connections that we, Aunt Ann and Uncle Ed had good friends in Monroe, Michigan that already had a dress shop. And they suggested about different places in New York that they went to and so forth. And from there we just went on and just felt our way, and that's what we did.
Yeah. Okay. And was Grandma Sarah ever involved in the store?
Only in buying. She used to like to buy merchandise just for us to be successful.
Yeah. Oh, in other words, she would come into the store and buy dresses and whatnot.
Right. Only for us to be successful.
I understand. Was the store successful?
Very successful.
Yeah. And what ended up at the end? You ended up selling?
Originally, we had a buyer for the store. But at that time, True Half's already sold the building to Stan Goldman. And he wasn't going to give anyone a lease. If we stayed there, fine. But we were ready to sell. And so when he decided he wouldn't give them a lease, of course they backed out, and we decided we'd probably just do just as well by selling everything out. We sold everything, from everything in the store, all the merchandise, even to the showcases and everything. We sold out, and we did very well.
That's great. Who was the target market?
What do you mean?
What was the average person that walked into the store to buy a dress? What was her age? Was it I assume it was a she, and what was her age, and what did you carry exactly?
Well, we carried, I think, more for the young matron to the older person. But then we got a lot of young people coming in. Mm-hmm. And the market was really Toledo, Bowling Green, all the small cities, small towns around, because at that time but Southwick wasn't open yet. So we got a lot of people from Bowling Green. We even got this Mrs. Kreischer, that her husband was president of Bowling Green University at that time, came and she brought all her friends. And it was just by word of mouth. We didn't even advertise in the paper. Mm-hmm. It was just by word of mouth.
That's
Isn't
perfect.
that amazing?
Yeah. Who was in charge of selling the customers when they came in the store?
All of us. I wasn't on the floor as much as Aunt Evie and Aunt Mickey and Aunt Evie and Aunt Mickey, because I did the books and I was in the back. I did the biggest amount of bookkeeping in the store, but I had a lot of good customers. In fact, I just noticed where the Scott Ramey that's running for judge again in Sylvania, his mother was one of my best customers. She used to come in and ask for me.
That's amazing.
I had some fantastic customers. When I was on the floor, I did really good in selling, and I enjoyed it.
Yeah. That's great. Well, it was your own, right?
Right.
So I showed you a lot of these pictures. I wanted to go through each picture individually, if I could. Actually, you know what? Before I get to that, I wanted to ask you about the first story I ever heard about the family was how Aunt Ann and some of the older siblings would chip in to help the three of the sons get through medical school. And I was wondering if you could tell me how that process,
Well, I think the big one, I think Aunt Ann and Uncle Ted, I think, helped where Uncle Abe was concerned. With Uncle Ray and Uncle Don, Uncle Ray had, was in service, and I think they gave him special, you could get in a GI thing,
Yeah.
And the same thing with Uncle Don had scholarships, both athletically and scholastically.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think they helped much with them.
Well, the story I always heard was that Grandma Sarah essentially devised a plan to that she determined that these three sons, Abe and Ray and Don, would become doctors, and that was the way it was going to be. And part of that plan required that some of the older siblings needed to work or needed to, chip in with the family so that they could go to school and they could study hard.
Oh,
and
I'm
they
sure
could
that
achieve.
she was a big influence.
Mm-hmm.
But if they didn't want to do it, they did it willingly, so that's what it was.
So it wasn't an official family policy.
I think it just happened with each one.
Mm-hmm. But why would it be determined that Uncle Abe would go to medical school and not, Uncle Ted?
Well, Uncle Ted was more of a businessman.
Mm-hmm. And that way from a very young age.
Right, where Uncle Abe was more a student.
So it was natural.
Yeah, and of course, that's the way it was.
Now, why doctors and not lawyers or
Well, at that
accountants?
time, to be a doctor, that was. I can't begin to tell you what it was in those days. That was the biggest honor in the world. And of course, Grandma Sarah's brother was a doctor, and it was just one of those things. It was just one of those things that was just considered just the thing to do if you were capable of it.
Which brother of Grandma Sarah's was a doctor?
That was William's empire. We called him Uncle Belle.
Mm-hmm.
That was Maudette's. We went through this before.
Right.
Maudette's father.
My dad's father, right. And do you think that that's why Grandma Sarah saw it as such an honor?
Oh, I think even before that, she just.
That was the way it was?
Yeah. It was not only her, it was her generation.
Mm-hmm. At what age would each sibling leave the house?
Well, none of us left the house until we were married. I mean, it was very frowned on that anyone would live outside of their family home until they were married.
Mm-hmm. So essentially, even the boys?
Even the boys. Of course, the boys were either away at school or whatever, in the army or something,
Mm-hmm.
in service.
So then that's the other thing that I wanted to ask you about was military service.
Okay.
A lot of the pictures we've seen show almost every one of the uncles in uniform.
Well, the only thing is, Uncle Ted, I think, was already married and had Nancy was born, and they didn't take anyone in if they were married or they had children. So it started with Uncle Abe, who was like a year and a half younger. He was in service,
Mm-hmm.
and Uncle Ray was in service, and Uncle Don was in service, and Uncle Mutt.
Mm-hmm. All of them were in service.
All four of them were in service.
And do you remember what division or what branch of the military they were in?
I'm not sure. I know that most of them were in the Army. I know Uncle Mick was in the Army. Uncle Abe might have been in the medical unit, but he was in France during the war. I might even have some articles about Uncle Abe when he was in France, and Uncle what was in Germany. I think Uncle Ray might have been in, I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
I'd have to look that up. But I think they were all in the Army, basically.
Mm. And
but you can get that information from Uncle Don. Are you going to interview Uncle Don?
oh yeah.
Okay.
So they were all, now did they see action? They were doctors in the Army, I imagine.
I think...
Or they were soldiers?
I think that they might have all seen action. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Hard to imagine exactly what the years were.
Yeah, well, you'll have to ask Uncle Don.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm sure he'll know. So that was what I wanted to ask you. So, there's a few of these pictures that we found, just a few of them. But, this picture looks like it was taken in the airport.
It might have been when when Papa and I were going to, it was really our first vacation. And Joel was home, the only one home at the time. And Billy and Dixie and Sam, who's in this picture.
That's Sam right there?
Yeah. Stayed at my house with Joel because I didn't want to be alone because we were going to be gone for about a week. I mean, like 10 days or 2 weeks. And therefore, that's why I had a hat on at that time when you traveled. And Papa's not in the picture.
Any idea where you were going?
Yes, we were going out west. We were going to visit Nancy, and we were going to Spokane first. And then we were going to San Francisco to see Nancy. And then I think we went to LA to see one of Dad's cousins that lived there. And so it was quite a trip for us. Papa planned the whole thing. And the fact that Joel was, we didn't want Joel to be alone, so Billy and Dixie and Sam, who was a baby then, stayed with Joel.
That's terrific.
That was his...
Now, who is in Spokane? Is that little Frida?
Little Frida lived there with her dad, Benji. And I guess she must have been married already to David, right?
And Nancy was in San Francisco?
Right.
And I think we actually have a picture of that also.
Oh, do you?
Of you standing next to Cousin Nancy.
It could be, yeah. And Aunt Evie must have gone to the airport to see me off, too, which is interesting. See Dad and I off.
Yeah.
Papa and I off.
So that was probably Toledo Airport?
Yes.
That's
That's something. I
fantastic.
never saw that picture. I wonder where you got that.
I'm sure it's Aunt Mickey's.
Oh,
If it's
oh
in,
for sure from Aunt Mickey.
we got a lot of them, Nana. We got a lot of pictures coming. This is in the Mickey Lane store. I already asked you a lot
Okay.
about the
This
Mickey
is
Lane
me.
shop. Yeah.
And I have the books, the accounts receivable books in my hand. I was probably going to the back room to work.
Uh-huh.
This is the back of Aunt Ann, I think. Isn't that something? Not a gray hair in my head.
It's hard to remember that store. I have faint memories of
Yeah,
it.
well, it's many years.
And this is Aunt Mickey. What do you remember from this picture?
This is in the side of the Mickey Lane shop. This is the beauty shop was right. We were on the corner, and as you turn the corner, in the same building was a beauty shop. It was called Sharon Beauty Shop, and that's Aunt Mickey.
Any idea who might have taken that picture?
I have no idea. I really don't know. I used to go to this beauty shop all the time, by the way. And the owner from this beauty shop lives in where Annie Lane lives,
Uh-huh.
in that retirement home.
Oh, yeah. They live there. They both live there now?
Uh-huh.
Oh, Sharon,
stylist.
Stylist.
It's a beauty shop.
Okay. That's great. And this picture goes back a long ways. It's Grandma Sarah with her 4 daughters. This must have been after
This is
Aunt Frida died.
oh, way after. Way after.
Well, how old do you think you all are right there?
Well, right there, I must be in my 30s.
Uh-huh.
I don't think Joel was born yet. Bob and Jim were born, and we lived in Burkett, and Joel was born in Burkett Place.
So that house is at Burkett Place.
Right, and this is Aunt Abby, so I might have been maybe 32, she was probably 29,
Mm-hmm.
and Aunt Mickey must have been 36, and Aunt Ann must have been about 42 in that picture. And Grandma Sarah.
Now, from left to right, who are the sisters?
Well, this is Aunt Ann,
Uh-huh.
you know.
Sure.
This is Aunt Mickey, and this is me. This is Aunt Abby, and this is Grandma Sarah.
So how old would Grandma Sarah be approximately there?
Well, she was like 20 years older than Aunt Ann. Aunt Ann was, I'd say 42. But she was probably only 62, 63. So it was a young family then.
Yeah, definitely. Now, any idea why you were all at your house?
Well, that wasn't unusual in those days, you know, to visit one house or the other.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, Aunt Abby lived with Grandma Sarah.
And Evie lived with Grandma Sarah at that
Yeah,
time?
she might have been just before she married Uncle Phil.
Mm-hmm.
And Aunt Mickey might have been in town.
No, Aunt Evie has a wedding ring on. A wedding
Oh, well,
band
then
on.
she was already married.
Mhm.
Yeah. Aunt Abby and Uncle Phil were married in our house in Burkett Place.
Oh, were they?
Yeah.
And this is Grandma Sarah.
This is on Franklin and Delaware. That's our home.
Mhm.
This is where we we grew up in. I think I was like 6 years old. We moved into Franklin and Delaware. And of course you can see it's a wintry day. And I don't know who took Grandma Sarah's picture then. But there she is. So that's quite a picture.
Yeah, she looks dressed up.
Yeah, well, she might have been, well, it was not unusual to you wear a hat wherever you went in those days, and it was winter time.
This actually in front of the house, the actual house right there?
Yeah, there's the front steps to the house.
Oh, I see.
Okay, this is Uncle Ted in the center,
Uh-huh.
and Uncle Ray, and Uncle Don, and I don't know what the occasion was, but Uncle Don, you know, has a suit on, but Uncle Ted and Uncle Ray aren't dressed, so it couldn't have been anything to do with the bar mitzvah. It could have been he graduated or something, or just got home from graduation.
Well, he looks pretty young there.
Very, very young. We'll have to ask him.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to interview Uncle Don. You'll have to tell me what this was about. I find it
I will.
interesting.
We will find
Let's see
out.
the background, if I can figure something out.
Yeah, let's see.
I've
that
never
house,
seen this picture.
What does the house look like in the background?
See, I can't tell. But you can see how handsome Uncle Ted is. Did you think he's handsome?
Very handsome man.
But will you let me know when you interview Uncle Don? I'll be very interested to know about that.
Absolutely. And this is you.
That's when I was married to Papa.
That was your wedding picture?
Mhm.
How old were you there?
23.
Yeah.
Aunt Frida was the only one that was a white bride. The rest of us, because Grandma Sarah was superstitious, because she didn't have a happy marriage. She was only married for the first time, maybe for 2 months, and got a divorce. That's Aunt Frida.
Oh, so Aunt Frida was a white bride.
Right.
She was married for 2 months.
Right, and got a divorce. And I don't even remember who she was married to.
That must have been big news.
Very much so in that day. And so after that, all four of his daughters
Yeah.
were not married in white. We all were dressed. That was a navy blue dress with a pink top.
So because
Because it kind of a superstition.
because
And we did all four have happy marriages.
it's true. So Grandma Sarah would not allow a white dress because of the happy
Well,
marriage.
she was superstitious.
But doesn't a white dress symbolize something in particular?
Well, purity, I guess, but
Yeah.
we certainly were pure.
I'm not questioning that, but I was wondering other guests. Maybe other guests were uncomfortable.
No. In fact, most people during my generation, because there wasn't that much money, it was not unusual not to be a white bride. I think the only one of my friends that were a white bride was Mrs. Kripke was a white bride, and Mrs. Lieber. All of my friends, the rest of my friends that were in that sorority were not white brides because they couldn't afford to be. And I couldn't afford it either.
So when somebody got married, what was the process? Once it was decided that they'd be married, who would pay for the wedding? Where were the weddings? Where did they take place? You mentioned Aunt Evie's was in.
At my house, and I was married at home.
And Uncle Abe paid for your wedding.
That's right.
What others do you remember?
And Aunt Mickey was married, and so was Aunt Ann. We were all married at home.
And who was invited?
Just family and very close friends. None of the weddings are real big. But of course, it was at home.
And it was a traditional Jewish wedding.
Oh, definitely.
Would there be any dancing afterwards?
No, not at our weddings.
Did any honeymoons?
You mean honeymoon? I can't remember if any of us had any kind of a honeymoon, maybe a couple of days or something like that.
But certainly weren't flying to Hawaii or anything.
No.
Nothing like that at the time. Okay. So is there anything in between yesterday and today that you thought of that you any stories that come to mind? Especially, maybe, well, not especially anything, just anything come to mind that you can think of that you want to talk about now? This isn't, last chance, but
No, I
anything
understand.
that comes to mind.
The only thing is, when we talked about Aunt Ann's Uncle Ed and Papa were in business together. And there was a lot of hard times during that time, so we lived together. At that time, I just had Bobby, and they just had little Marilyn. And we rented a home for a while, and then we bought a home on Kenilworth, and we lived together for a couple of years. And then they bought the house on Kenilworth, and we eventually bought Burkhead Place.
So they were in business together. Was that the grocery business? And was it a single family house that you lived in together?
Yes.
Were the kids in separate bedrooms?
How did that work? We each had a bedroom, and then there was a third bedroom, and I think the two of them, they were little kids. I guess either one in a crib and one in a bed, something like that. I can't remember. Something like that.
I see. That's interesting.
Yeah.
So how long did they work together?
Many, many years, until Uncle Ed had a very severe heart attack, and he couldn't work for a while. And so then Papa took over, and he never was able to go back into the grocery business, Uncle Ed.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a story in
Man,
itself.
that's very interesting. Any other family members live together that you can remember?
No, this is a very unusual thing.
Mm-hmm. Grade school, anything you remember from grade school?
Just the one time I told you about Fulton School was an open air school, fresh air school, and I told you about that, so that would be repetition.
Were there any instances, whether with the girls or with the boys, that maybe one family member is getting picked on by someone and other family members came in to intervene?
I can't think of anything offhand.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe someone else is better at that than me. I never had that problem.
I can't imagine you getting to it.
No, I can't imagine. I would run a mile from something like that.
And actually, you know what I'd love to do, because I don't think I did a great job of it before, is to spend a little bit more, is to go through each of the brothers and sisters and go into more depth about, maybe we should make a list. I'd love to know, what they were like growing up, who they got married to, family, and and then career about each one of them. Is that okay?
Yeah, but I don't think we have time today.
It's 12 o'clock.
It's 12 o'clock, and I should be there around 12:30.
Okay. So we got 15 minutes.
Okay.
We got 2 minutes per kid. Just one more time. Just make sure. Just go. You can just go through each one. And if you just want to say the name of the so it's starting with Aunt Frida, and what you remember about her, who she got married to, any work that she did. I remember you telling me a lot of this already.
Yeah, well, I told you everything about Aunt Frida.
Who did she get married to?
To Benji, believe it or not, Endelman.
Uh-huh. And they moved to Spokane then together?
Well, no, he's lived in Spokane. He had a big steel business in Spokane.
Mm-hmm.
When she married him, he was very, very comfortable.
Mm-hmm. And she moved out there?
Well, she went there on a vacation, as I told you before.
Mm-hmm.
And Uncle Ed, which would be your great-uncle,
mm-hmm.
great-great-uncle, introduced her to Benji, and it clicked, and they got married.
And she moved out to Washington?
And she never came back to Toledo.
Yeah. And then she had little Frida.
You're right.
Gotcha. Okay. Next?
Next is Aunt Ann, and I told you all about Aunt Ann, that we worked together, and before that we had the grocery store together.
Do you remember how she met
Uncle Ed?
Yeah.
That's a very interesting story. In fact, Marilyn and Linda would not be here today if it wasn't for me. What happened is Aunt Ann wasn't dating anyone at the time, and she was in her 30s. 30, 31 to 32, I can't remember. And Aunt Mickey and Uncle Jack came in from New York, where they were living at the time, and Uncle Eddie was a good friend of Uncle Jack's, introduced Aunt Ann to Uncle Eddie, and it clicked. He really liked her very much. But a couple days later, just before he called, he was calling her for a second date, Aunt Ann had this tweed outfit, it was this tweed skirt with a matching tweed coat with a raccoon collar, a very pretty outfit, was hanging on the closet, and she had to run to the store for something, and she put on the coat. When she was coming back, she snagged it just a little bit, and Aunt Ann got hysterical. You ruined my coat, you ruined my coat. In the meantime, the phone rang, and I got on the phone, and I could tell from it's a gentleman's voice and asking for Aunt Ann. And I said, just a minute, Aunt Ann says, I'm not getting on the phone, I'm blah, 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 blah. And I pinched her kind of. I said, you have to get on the phone and you have to say yes. Because I figured it had to be Uncle Eddie. And so that was the second date, and after that it became a very serious romance, thanks to me.
That's a great story. But Aunt Mickey and Uncle Jack don't get any credit for making the introduction?
Oh, they definitely get a credit. But Aunt Ann would have never answered the telephone.
Yeah.
And Uncle Eddie, if you knew him very well, if she ever refused him, he'd have never asked her again. I mean, has that kind of a nature. And that's the truth.
All right, so next?
The next is Uncle Ted.
And Uncle Ted married?
And Dorothy.
Mm-hmm.
And
do you remember how they met?
I don't know how they met, except, he dated, he always had a girlfriend, Uncle Ted. And Aunt Dorothy was one of them, and they had clicked and they got married. And they had Nancy.
Okay, and next?
The next is Uncle Abe.
Mm-hmm.
And I told you all about Uncle Abe. He's the one that paid for my wedding.
Mm-hmm.
He was always just wonderful around the house growing up, and I can't rave enough about him.
How did he meet Annie Lane?
I think at the beginning she was more crazy about him than he was about her. I mean, it was just like a date. He was more serious in his schooling and so forth. But eventually they got married.
Mm-hmm. And after Uncle Abe?
That was Aunt Mickey.
Mm-hmm. How did Aunt Mickey meet Uncle Jack?
I'm not exactly sure how she met Uncle Jack.
But I know he was a Brooklyn Dodger fan.
Right, and he came to visit his sister Charlotte, who lived in Toledo. And I guess he was introduced to Aunt Mickey, and it worked. He fell in love.
Mm-hmm.
But she had lots of boyfriends, Aunt Mickey.
Yeah. Okay, after Aunt Mickey?
Uncle Mutt. Herb Morton, as you know.
Morty?
Yeah. Where in the house, that's how they always called him. But then eventually we start calling him Mutt too, because, not in the family, not my mother or father, or Grandma Sarah and Uncle Julius, or Grandpa Julius, always called him by his name. But the brothers and sisters started calling him Mutt too.
Yeah. And who did he was married to Margaret.
Right.
We talked all about that.
Yeah.
And then after Uncle Mutt?
That's me.
Then you. We know all about you.
Right.
You want to tell your story? How'd you meet Papa?
That's a very interesting story. Mrs. Lieber, Jean Lieber, that's recently passed away, had a date with Papa. I had a date with, I can't even remember the young man. I can't even remember his name. And at that time it was fashionable to go to skating at a skating rink, roller skating. And so the two couples, Mrs. Lieber and Grandpa and Papa, and myself and my date, whoever it was at the time. It was a date that maybe I dated maybe once or twice. It was nothing, And we went there, and then we went to a restaurant afterwards called Bud and Luke's. It was quite popular at the time. And then the next day, I got a phone call from Papa asking me for a date. Well, I felt funny about it. It was, and so I talked to Mrs. Lieber about it. She said, it's fine. She said, it was just, a date for the evening. Fine, go, accept. So when he called me again, I said, fine. And I went out with him, and actually I never dated another person after that.
Yeah.
Because every time I had a date with him, when I left, he made a date for the next time. And during that time I had started to work at Fred Kristen and Sons, and I was really and truly, I wasn't really, by the time I got home I was really too tired to even go anyplace, you know. And so that's what happened.
So Papa had moves. He'd
He
lock
was-
you down for the next day.
He was very, very determined to marry me, even before I even thought about getting married.
I'm impressed with that.
He was really determined.
Yeah. And how did you feel about him?
I liked him, but I really wasn't planning on being serious. You know, it just wanted, I enjoyed being with him and so forth and so on, and that's what happened.
Okay, who's next?
Aunt Evie. And Aunt Evie was fixed up by Uncle Ed. And
Oh.
Eddie and Aunt, because I guess they knew Uncle Phil, and he was originally from Toledo, and I guess he was working out of town, came into Toledo, and Uncle Eddie introduced her to Aunt Evie. Aunt Evie also had a lot of boyfriends, you know, that she could have married. But she fell in love with Uncle Phil, and that was it.
And that was it. And after Aunt Evie?
It's Uncle Ray. He
Mhm.
married Aunt Marilyn. And how Uncle Ray was visiting, I think he might have been either in training or something in Brooklyn, and he was visiting Aunt Mickey, and Aunt Mickey, I guess, met Aunt Marilyn, and she thought she was very nice, introduced Uncle Ray to her. And during that time, Grandma Sarah was there, and she said, "That's for my son."
Really?
She's the perfect person for my son, Ray. And so Uncle Ray invited her to come to Toledo because he was going to be in Toledo. And Aunt Marilyn, when she came to Toledo, stayed with me and Papa. We were living in Burkhead at the time, and she stayed with us during that time. And that was quite a romance. It was really nice.
And then Uncle Don?
Uncle Don married Lois. That's
Stephen?
that was Stevie and Danny, and they also had one brother in between that passed away that had a heart condition. And then Aunt Lois had passed away when Danny was just very little, maybe 4 or 5 years old. And then he married Jan, and she had 2 daughters, he had 2 sons, and they adopted each other's children. And that became a family. And that's enough for today.
Okay. Well, no, 2 more questions. We got 5 minutes left.
Okay.
Actually, the first question is then so the 3 brothers that became surgeons all essentially went into business together?
Well, first of all, Uncle Abe was already in practice many years. And I don't know how, evidently, I think when Uncle Ray started, he went to his own practice. Then when Uncle Don came back, he was going to go in with Uncle Ray, with Uncle Abe, and then I think Uncle Don was going in with Uncle Abe, but he came back. And then Uncle Ray decided he would go in, and so they had the 3 of them went and practiced together. Who's here? Who is that?
That's my mom. She is open to Kevin. So they all went to work together, and Aunt Ann kept the books?
Yeah.
Was she like the receptionist?
Yes.
And kept the books? And whatnot?
Yes.
Okay. And anyone else, any other brothers and sisters take part?
I don't know.
And how long did that take place?
They were in practice for quite a few years, and what happened at the end is That Uncle Don, I guess,
I can't hear you.
Uncle Don went in and practiced for himself, and Uncle Ray stayed with Abe.
So Uncle Abe and Uncle Don practiced together, or
Uncle Abe and Uncle Ray practiced together at the end, and Uncle Don had his own practice.
and then my last question is out of all the brothers and sisters, who was most like Grandma Sarah and who was most like Grandpa Julius? Personality-wise and looks-wise.
I think Aunt Ann and Aunt Evie were more like Grandma Sarah. They were more outspoken, and whatever they thought, they, spoke up about, mostly. So I think those two were more like her. And Grandpa Julius, God, I don't know. Uncle Mutt would be the closest one.
To his personality?
No one really, I think Uncle Abe probably looked mostly like Grandpa, I'm not sure. Grandpa happened to be very, very good looking. But probably Uncle Mutt would be probably closest in his nature, and yet not exactly.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thanks, Mom.
And someone else might have another opinion.
We're gonna get him.
Okay, my love.
Thanks, Mom.
But I am going to look up until your great